23rd of June 2022, video 45U, Europe's energy crisis. I'll try and speak a bit louder because there are complaints of people not hearing me. Now, you will know that I have been campaigning against all this renewable energy because it doesn't work. It can't work the way it's been said. It doesn't do what it says on the tin. And I've been saying that for over 12 years. And every politician has been told it. I've been made sure everybody's made aware of it. We've been trying to beat them in the courts and hold it up, but they're ploughing ahead with it in Ireland and in the rest of Europe. And for years, all we heard out of Germany was, we're building more and more wind turbines. We have the most renewable energy of anybody in the world. Well, now we have the Dutch, the Germans and the Austrians. They're reopening their coal-fired power plants. They're going to reopen the coal-fired power plants because Russia is cutting the gas from them. Now, the plan obviously was for all these green nutters that got votes handy and got careers to live off cheap Russian gas, which is a low emitter, and Russian oil, and then install all this wind and tell the people and lie to them that this was doing some good. Once they had the cheap Russian gas, they could keep their emissions down using the gas and claim they were doing great work and have the wind as an ornament and have the solar as an ornament. Wind generally does nothing whatsoever over a year's period. It wouldn't save a lorry load of fuel in a year. That's my own view. Other people disagree. But it's quite clear that the German had something like 19% of its electricity renewables about 7 years ago, and it's more than that. Ireland has 4,000 megawatts, which is equal to average daily demand, and it's more than that demand 10 years ago, and yet we're still burning fossil fuel as if there was no tomorrow. It's not working. It's only a very, very minor thing. Now, when you count it over a year, there are days you'll get plenty of wind energy, and then the television and radio will come on and they'll tell lies on the newspaper and say, look at all we did yesterday. Unfortunately, yesterday's no good today. Now, it seems that we know the Germans got rid of the nuclear power plants, but it seems to have actually decommissioned them. And it also looks to me like if they could bring them back, they would. But I'd say that an awful lot of their engineers and specialists that worked in those plants retired off and they're not coming back. And they have nothing to replace them. So they have no staff to come in and run their nuclear plant. Now, I'm only guessing that, folks, but it seems to me they made a crazy decision that, the Germans are mad by and large, and they shut them down, and they surely have them back now if they could. So I'd say both the plant is gone, and also the specialists to run it are no longer there, and therefore they can't use them. So they're opening coal. What they call is black, bituminous, dirty coal. That's the solution. And the whole idea of all this renewables was to stop using coal. But we now know they were lying, they were cheating, they were going to use gas, which Russia has plenty of. And now, with the invasion of Ukraine, that is gone and they have a crisis. The Green Dream, where is it now? What are they going to do? Joe Biden in America was over visiting Saudi Arabia, begging them to up the output of oil, and they told him they were doing no more. They had their contracts, that's it. You get whatever's going, and that's it. So they sent him off with his tail between his legs. This is the guy that promised he was going to cut out fuel altogether and close down his own power stations, his own pipelines, the big gas pipelines and the big oil pipelines. He shut them down and withdrew their licenses to stop the United States producing oil and gas. And he's over begging the Saudi Arabians to do the very same. So not a word out of Greta at all. I think she'd now be complaining, and she could get media coverage that they're undoing everything she tried to do. Well, why isn't she whinging? Because the whole thing, the whole dynamic has changed. Now, I've no doubt Putin planned all this. Putin was only laughing at these green idiots. This is all part of his plan. Everything they're doing is playing right into his barrow. They're saying his economy is going to collapse and all that. Well, certainly, these type of wars don't benefit anybody, but it looks to me that he had a lot more planning into the impacts of the war than had anyone in Europe or the United States. It could be argued, that Vladimir Putin is saving the planet from climate change. He's going to stop Europe burning coal, oil, gas. Now, Europe has to up its own, so they'll not be getting any from him. So what's he doing? Isn't this what they wanted? Isn't this what the Greens and the cultural Marxists craved? We leave the fuel in the ground, it's worthless. It's worthless. This is what was said only 2 years ago. The oil, coal and gas in the ground is worthless and will never be taken out. We're going to run all on renewables. And as I have said in earlier videos, and please go back and look at them, you cannot run a grid on wind and solar without oil, coal and gas. If you have a bus and a load of passengers and they have to get from A to B and the driver takes a heart attack and you have no other driver, the fact that you have the bus and the passengers is not enough. And this is the lies that we were lied to by successive Irish governments, successive Irish media, and nobody calls them to account. Now they're in the situation of, you'd expect them to be able to say, "Oh, grand, we have our windmills. Oh, but the wind doesn't blow on a calm day." Even if it did blow, you still can't use it without fossil fuel. That is the fact, and the thick numbskulls I meet everyone cannot believe that. They do not believe it, yet it is an absolute fact. You must have your base load plant at least 40% running before you can bring in any renewables, because of the need to keep the grid stable. Now, also, some preliminary examinations carried out by the Irish Energy blog found that while the east-west interconnector between Britain and Ireland does save a little bit of emissions in Ireland, because it's firm. They can book it a couple of days in advance. They can ring up the British and say, "Will you be able to supply us with so much on the interconnector for the whole of next week?" And if they agree, it will be supplied. That's produced from coal, oil and gas, and a little nuclear from France. But because of the rules, it's not counted. So if you send fumes and emissions out up the chimney in Wales, it's not counted as Ireland's emissions. It's considered as green, clean energy in Ireland. That is the crookedness and the corruption of the rules that are in place, folks. So Putin is doing a lot to save the planet, and I think maybe we should nominate him for the Nobel Peace Prize for saving our environment from the horrors of this fossil fuel by cutting off the supplies to Germany and Austria and Holland. And it's early yet. Wait till November comes in, folks. Now the Irish, this is no laugh, the Irish Climate Science Forum held a virtual meeting today. The Irish Climate Science Forum, I'm not a member, but they're not like me. They would go along with all this climate a bit, but they have agreed that if this renewables is pushed as it is, the whole system throughout Europe will collapse. If they keep forcing the renewables in, irrespective of what fossil fuel they have, they're going to bring the whole system down. It could take, if the European grid system collapses, it could take over a week to get anything up again. The Irish system's a bit smaller, but it could still take a few days. If it collapses due to a cascade, that is where the grid becomes so unstable that the frequency goes all over the place, with erratic wind and solar and our silly batteries and all this other thing. If this is all forced in, as it is being forced in, then you're going to have a collapse in Europe. And you're also going to have terrible high electricity prices, because all this renewables has to be paid for. And I have staked my reputation long ago, and there are several videos there, if you just go back a bit, where I promised all of this and forecast all of these high prices. And this body, ICSF, Irish Climate Science Forum, they also say that there's a good chance of civil unrest. and movement to extreme popular candidates in elections. When people have no electricity, I was talking to a man the other day whose children will be going back to school in September, and he has a lot of driving to do. And with the price of oil and everything going up, he worries. He worries a lot. Will he be able to put them through an ordinary national school in the coming year, and maybe a bit of secondary as well? So people are being pushed and pushed and pushed. And you couldn't warn them before this happened. I tried to warn them before that happened. But people do come up to me now and say, you were right all along. Yeah, you were right. It's too late now. I don't want any clap on the back. All we can do is see, can we do anything to alleviate the hardship that will be caused? Now, so you cannot use renewables. Cannot use renewables now without fossil fuel. You cannot. That's what that says there. You cannot use renewables without fossil fuel. You cannot use it. You have to have the fossil fuel, either by gas, by oil, or coal, or nuclear. Understand? Now, engineers have been forced to install wind farms and solar farms all over the place. The destruction of the environment. There's another big one going up down in Tart, beside the Rah wind farm, where totally everywhere you look now it's windmills, and all in breach of the law on the SCA directive. So, folks, that's basically the situation. I hate to be to have the hardship of the Ukrainian people, and there are decent people there too, and they're suffering a lot. I hate that they have to go through this. It'd be lovely if we could have had this crisis without the bloodshed, but that's life, folks. That's life. The EU, the Americans, the Greens, the climate loonies, and the cultural Marxist lefties have walked us straight into this situation. The parties such as Fine Gael in Ireland and Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin and the other left-wing parties, mainly in Dublin, have bit it and went with it, hook, line and sinker. Breed Smith, the socialist, a member of the Irish Parliament, TD in Dublin, talked about the transition period, and how we'll use gas and how we'll use this, talking through her hat, talking utter and baloney nonsense. The fact of the matter is, yesterday there was very little wind. We were burning 70% was gas coming from somewhere, probably Britain, maybe a little of our own. There was a little oil, and they had a huge amount of diesel generators running, up to 10%, and they had about 10% coal. You can get that on Airgrid's dashboard. So it looks like there's a huge crisis. It looks to me like Putin and the Russians are not going to back down. It looks to me that the Ukrainians and the Americans supporting them are not going to back down. I predicted at the beginning that this would drag out for a long time. And that's the difference in my channel and other channel. I'm one of the very few who predicted accurately all about how the war would go. I predicted the energy crisis long ago. And I predicted a number of other things as well, including a financial crisis coming. Now, I briefly saw in the paper today where the ESRI, the Economic and Social Research Institute, is giving a glowing report for the Irish economy. John Fitzgerald, the late Garrett Fitzgerald's son, was in charge of that. I think he still is. I spoke to him. I found him to be a dumb, stupid man who can't count at all, not like his father. And here we are with warnings from banks and everybody in America and in Ireland and in Britain that we're facing a severe economic correction. And here we have the Irish ESRI saying, "Oh no, it's going to be lovely. It's going to be fabulous. Oh, it's going to be fabulous." They don't have the brains to figure out we have a fuel crisis. We have a situation like the 1970s again, and our economies are very shaky. By the way, what was also agreed at that meeting of the Irish Climate Forum, what was also agreed in that was the impact of the Ukraine war is to bring forward all these problems: the collapse of the grid, the lack of fuel, the inflation, the economic disasters. That'll bring it forward, But it was agreed that if there never was a Ukraine, we were going to have a severe economic crisis anyway. And that vindicates what I've been saying. Even before any Ukraine happened, we still had the father and mother of a terrible economic crisis in store. And they can't all be wrong. All of the big investors and all of them are talking about this correction. So folks, it's 15 minutes. Give me a thumbs up or a thumbs down. I was unfortunately right. That is the bottom line. I was right in what I said because I use figures and figure out stuff. And it's amazing how many people agree with me, but it's amazing how many people come to me and they don't agree with me and tell me that I have no right to disagree with the government. I was talking to a chap today at the Kingscourt Livestock Mart who tells me if you're asked a question in the media and you don't give the right answer, they won't publish it and you're not wanted and they hate you for it. And a lot of people dislike me intensely because I'm challenging their darling wee Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael and Sinn Féin. And how dare I do this when you have all these lovely journalists on television telling us the opposite. But this is the fact. The fact of the matter is the internet now is loaded down with predictions of doom and gloom, terrible problems with the interest rates, the Fed in America, Federal Reserve increasing interest rates, and the European Union now making a correction, and that is on the cards. And as I read it, and correct me if I'm wrong, the ESRI in Ireland is giving the exact opposite view, and that's just to stop investors pulling their money out from shaky banks and from shaky stocks and shares and all that sort of stuff, and moving into better things like gold, etc. That's what all they're at. They're just engaging in sheer propaganda, which is an absolute disgrace. Thumbs up, folks, or thumbs down. We'll see you back. Thank you.